Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's installment of the Quint-Essentials. This time being heralded by me, Max the Chieftain Hurley. So you know this is obviously going to be better than Scott's ones, but that's for you guys to decide there. And this month, so the Quint-Essentials is obviously our monthly snippet where we discuss the top 5 of anything and all things Warhammer Fantasy, fluff-wise, crunch-wise, anything you can discuss. And this month it's down to me to discuss my top 5 cavalry units in the game, and this will include monstrous cavalry as well. So there is a lot to choose from. So cavalry units are units I'm not going to be I'm being honest with you guys. I don't use a lot, if I'm honest. I'm not great in using them, and I say that as I plan to buy a very cavalry heavy a high off army in the future. But they can be a good and devastating flanking choice. You look to the likes of, especially the monstrous cav, they can really swing a game and just put it out there and just absolutely win it for you. My favourites being obviously what we're going to discuss today. So let's get into it. And in my number 5 spot for cavalry units in the game are Grail Knights. So this is for 2 reasons, to be honest. This is for their fluff and their crunch. Fluff-wise, I feel like Grail Knights are incredibly cool. I think they're your average man that's gone on this quest to find the Grail, and he's gone through years of hardship, never sleeping in the same place twice in a row. So he always has to move on after he slept in one place, fighting the worst that the forests of Arden and the lands of Bretonnia can throw at them, and even further afield if he decides to join a crusading army or an errantry war. And so at the end of this quest that they go through, and all the hardships, all the suffering, and all the missed companionships from his family, his wife, his children, if he has any, because you can take up the questing vow whenever you want to. You're not limited to when you are a young person. So if the call comes to you and you feel like you need to take it, you can take it at any point. So at the end of the journey, if they manage to survive all these years of hardship, they are finally blessed with the sight of the lady carrying the famous Grail itself, and the lady allows the knight to sip from the Grail, and they are imbued with a portion of her power, and thus become demigods. And demigods, realistically, in game terms, is what they become when you compare them to the other knights of Bretonnia. They are strength 4 straight off the bat, which is fantastic. 2 attacks apiece, fantastic. Initiative 5, fantastic. Weapon skill 5, fantastic. They're all good things, to be honest, and especially when you give them the devastating charge, which Triple Crown Compact does give them. They are absolutely terrifying to face if they charge down on you, especially if they've got some magical support with stuff like Lord of Heavens with Harmonic Convergence, or if your opponent's been given Curse of Midnight Wind, anything of that sort of nature. Grail Knights are terrifying to face down on the battlefield. So realistically, that from a fluff and a crunch wise, I think they're good. They're really fun. I love to see them on the board. I think they look fantastic when they're painted up well as well. But they nab the number 5 spot. So in number 4, I am giving this spot to Reiksguard. Odd choice. I know a lot of people be saying this, but I'm doing this mainly from a fluff perspective. I feel like I always have this thing for units that are the bodyguards of the main character the main sort of the leader of a faction in Warhammer Fantasy. So Blackguard and Nagarond, I love because I love the idea of these stubborn Howard wearing wielding Dark Elves guarding the Witch King and Nagaroth Malekith himself. And I love that idea. White Lions of Trace, again, I know they're a bit of a contentious unit because they are quite broken for what they are, or underpointed for what they are, but they're really cool. They're just the 2-handed weapons, Guardians of the Phoenix King. They are just really cool, fluff wise. And the same goes for Reiksguard. I think Reiksguard they're up there. Like Karl Franz is an incredibly fun character to read about. He's an incredibly good character as a protagonist of a setting. So Reiksguard being these, just if I'm honest, just basic humans. There's basic humans in a full set of armor, which all knights get, but they are so loyal and so sort of put themselves forward for the cause of the empire that they're willing to do anything for their liege, for their emperor. And the fact they get stubborn is really cool. Now, I know stubborn is not the best rule that works with cavalry, because if cavalry's in a unit after, say, more than one turn of combat, then something's gone wrong because they want to be charging over and over again to get the benefits of their lances. But this idea of just this unit of, say, 10 or 15 Rights Guard. I know 15 is a big unit for this sort of unit. So, but 10 or 15 of them surrounding Karl Franz the Emperor, who is also an inspired warhorse himself, just charging in. It just reminds me so much of like the desperation charges like Pelennor Fields or anything of that sort of nature. Just like, we're going to die doing this, but we're going to do it, and we're going to we're going to hold down this flank until our last breath. And I just think they're really cool. So Rights Guard come in at number 4. So number 3 spot for me is the Dragon Princes of Calador. And this is the unit in which I said I'm going to try and build an army around when eventually I get a High Elf army, which at the time of filming should be in about, I'm going to say, 3 weeks time, roughly, because today the time of filming is the 7th of December, and I said I wouldn't buy the army until January at that point in time. So you're looking at about 3 weeks until I start buying it. The Dragon Princes, they're fluff-wise, they're not the nicest people to be around. They are haughty, they are chauvinistic, they are not impetuous, they are just very aloof and stubborn sort of elves, as they were, even more so than a normal elf is, which is quite aloof as it is. The Dragon Prince go above and beyond this, in which they believe they have such an inner belief that they can win the battle, they can win any battle they want to. And off the battlefield, this is really sort of contentious and really pretentious to a lot of the high elf citizens out there, or seeing the nobles and princes and other military units of the high elf armies. But once they're in battle, Dragon Princes become this entirely different character, self-sacrificing, brave, courageous, inspiring, and a unit that you can count on to make the big charge, make the big plays, and the most crucial part of battle, in which they will charge in and slay the enemy, say the enemy lord, or slay the big monsters threatening to run down the rest of the army. Something that's really cool, in which on the battlefield they become an entirely different person. Off the battlefield again, they just become really, really big, just sort of meanies, no one wants to be around. But on the battlefield, that's where it matters. And in game, that's also where it matters as well. Dragon Princes are really, really good. Like, their weapon skill 6, I believe, initiative 5, 2 attacks apiece, which is really good. Strength 5 lets them down on the charge because they're still only an elf, so they're strength 5. But they come with dragon armor. Dragon armor, Ifilmar Barded Steeds, so they've got 2 up arm save, 2 up ward save against flaming, and a 6 up ward save. Now, this all has the beginnings of what's known as the Dragon Prince bus, or the Prince Star. So you obviously get your Dragon Princes, and you do build them up. You get like 10, 15 of these bad boys going, and that's your proper bus. You stick in a characters, stick in a Prince, stick in a couple of nobles, and then you stick in your High Elf Archmage on the Lore of High Magic, and start pumping out the High Magic Lore Tribute to buff that 6 up ward save they have up to a 3 up ward save. Now, on a cavalry unit that already has a 2 up arm save, this is just nuts. Like, there's nothing you get through it. And then you add in everyone's favourite Botwood, or Band of the Wild Dragon, they become just silly. Silly. There's not a lot that can deal with them, unless you just cast a spell in which they takes the models off the board. And really, the only what's going to do it is going to be something like Arnswell's Black Horror or Final Transmutation. Anything else, you just don't bother doing it. And you ain't got a lot to do with it in combat, because if you let some of the spells go off, if you get 2 spells off, the unit's got a 4 up ward save. Get 3 spells off, it's got a 3 up ward save. It's incredibly hard to deal with. So, from a fluff perspective and a crunch perspective, that's why Dragon Princes are my number 3 choice. So, now into the top 2. And my number 2 spot goes to Mournfang Cavalry. Now, I have always had this feeling that the best monstrous cavalry unit in the game comes down to 2 units. And I think you can understand who's coming at my number 1 spot then. Mournfang Cavalry, from a fluff perspective, they're alright. I'm not the biggest proponents of their fluff. They're just ogres that go beat down a Mournfang after it's had a particularly vicious battle on its own kind. Be over the head of the club, and then they mount it until they break the will of the animal. But from a crunch perspective, from the gaming perspective, these guys are terrifying. Like, they have 3 wounds apiece, as all monstrous cav do. They have 3 strength 4 attacks from the ogre up top, and then 4 strength 5 attacks from the Mournfang itself on top of a stomp, which in itself is terrifying. These are all weapon skill 3, so it's not the best, and ogres don't have the best way of improving weapon skill or your chances to hit. But what you want these guys to be doing is charging, because they all get impact hits D3 per model at strength 5. And movement 8 with Swift Stride means that they're going to be charging a lot. You have to stand a fair distance away from these guys to even remotely feel safe while you're facing them head on. And you need to be incredibly sort of hardy to take a charge from a Mournfang Cavalry unit. You let some of these get in, like say, just 3d3 strength 5 impacts on top of all the other attacks they're pumping out. Although they're going to be like initiative 3 and 2, if it's still a couple of those running around, there's still still some Mournfangs, 8 strength 5 attacks, plus 2 stomps as well. These guys are gonna really hurt you when they're charging combat. And not even like, let's say, that a Noble Warrior unit, which in my opinion is one of the best sort of bricks you can put down in the game. They will not come out of that smelling of roses. They'll probably come out of it, but they won't come out of it with any decent hopes of surviving the rest of the game. We're not even looking at like the rubbish troops, like say Empire State troops or High Elf Spearmen. Like you charge in Mournfang, it's all tears for bedtime for them. And then you got the fact that these guys can be given Iron Fists, which give them, with on top of their heavy armor they've already got, the +2 from the armor that the Mournfang's going to give them, so that's a 3 up. The Iron Fist will give them a 2 up armor save, and for whatever mad reason, allows them also to have a parry save, which amongst the cavalry units in the game, I think is quite rare. I don't think anything else gets a parry save in the game if you're mounted on a war beast. So, from Crohn's perspective, they are just insane for what they do. They are pricey, as all ogre units are. They are incredibly pricey. But you get them in the right positions, they will hold down flank and charge into the flank. If you charge in the flank with these guys, then you are laughing. But you get decent charge in the front, get about 43 or 33 strength 5 impact hits, then it's all good news for yourself. So before I move into my number 1 spot, which I think people might have already guessed by now, we're going to have a couple of honourable mentions from myself, because I do think there are other good cavalry units out there. And my first honorable mention is going to be Savage or Boy Boys, Biggins or otherwise, because I just think they're nuts. I just think they're incredibly crazy, especially their Biggins. If they're Biggins, they're actually quite terrifying. With the frenzy 2-handed weapons, and they can still use 2-handed weapons on top of the pig if they decide to take so, but take danger train tests on 1 or 2. So they themselves are quite crazy. But you get charging strength 5 Biggins on a cavalry with 3 attacks apiece is nothing to be sniffed at. Next honorable mention is going to be Blood Knights, which if you've watched the most recent, as a filming narrative game, you'll see that these guys are insane. They're just vampires on a horse. They may only have 1 wound, but they are just a vampire on a horse as frenzy and a lance. Strength 5 on the charge, 2 up arm save, 3 attacks apiece because you've got frenzy. Mad. Like, what is there that can stand up against that sort of charge? There's not much, to be honest. And my last honorable mention is going to be Necropolis Knights, because the models look ace. The models are fantastic. If you can get some of the originals from Games Workshop, they are beautiful. I think the models themselves, like the Cobra hoods on the actual Necro Servant itself, is fantastic. And I think there's something odd about the fluff saying that the venom itself drips into the palms of the rider so they get bound, but it simultaneously breaks every bone in the rider's body. Is just saying about that, it's just quintessentially gruesome and Warhammer fantasy. So my number 1 spot for top 5 cavalry units in the game are Skull Crushers of Khorne. Can you blame me? Can you blame me? Now, me and Scott always have the argument whether who's better, the Skull Crushers of Khorne and Mournfang Cavalry. Now, I will always put my hands up and say if the Mournfang Cavalry charge, the Mournfang are better. But in the long run, a unit of Skull Crushers against a unit of Mournfang Cavalry where there's no charges, my money is on Skull Crushers every day of the week. Not only do you have a Warrior Chaos of Khorne up top who has got 3 attacks, who you can give an Ensorcel Weapon to for strength 5 all the time, which I highly would recommend doing, you also have the Juggernaut itself underneath. Now, most war beasts or most mounts in the cavalry units, their mounts aren't decent in combat. They're not particularly good. Even monstrous ones, they can still lack a bit in the sort of weapon skill department. A Juggernaut Khorne that you ride upon is weapon skill 5 and strength 5 base. Like, it's nuts. Like, the Juggernaut is insane. It's probably one of the best monstrous cavalry mounts in the game you can get. Plus one strength on the charge. There's strength 6 on the charge. Like, what else do you want from a cavalry unit? Strength 5 impact, strength 5 stomp, sorry. In total, in the grind, Skull Crusher Khorne model has 6 strength 5 attacks, all weapon skill 5. Like, and then you have, say, a unit of 3 or 4 of them. it's insane. The amount of I've seen my Skull Crushers perform so much, and it's insane the amount of output they can give. The amount of damage you charge them into a unit, you charge them into anything like units, monsters, other cavalry. They'll just go through it. What I would say is that you, with the frenzy on the Skull Crusher, you do have to be careful being sort of pulled out of position and then get flanked. Because if you get flanked, you're probably going to lose your Skull Crushers, which is never fun because it's quite a lot of points. And it's about 370 odd points for a tooled up Skull Crusher unit. But I still think, with all that going, I still think, in my opinion, they're up there as the best monstrous cavalry unit in the game. My favorite cavalry unit, including monstrous as well in the game. I just love them. I always try and take a unit. If you're going to take warriors and you're not taking a Skull Crush unit in your rare, something's gone wrong, or you've got a different plan for your rare section. Say like to Hellcannons, which I'm also quite a big fan of. The Skull Crushers take the #1 spot. So go for number 5 with Grail Knights, number 4 Rights Guard, number 3 Dragon Princes, number 2 Mournfang Cavalry, and number 1 Skull Crushers of Khorne. Thank you for joining me today on this month's episode of the Quint-Essentials. If you like this episode, then go back to the other 2 episodes in which Scott talks about his top 5 hexes and top 5 magic weapons in the game as well. And you can see what he thinks about those sort of selections. If not, head back to the Knights Around Mustering Ground and view all of our other exclusive content. But until next time, I'll see you later.
Remember to tag your friends and like, subscribe and share. Then head over to triplecrownwargaming.com and become a Knight of the Realm today.
What are you doing, mate?
You alright? Do it for Warhammer!